And now, ladies and gentlemen of the old world, we're back in business once again with a community showdown between Bretonnia, who shall be led by the Flying Taco, facing off against the Wood Elves, who shall be led by XMT Dactor. Should be quite a bit of fun. Let's go ahead and take a look at the build of Bretonnia. So for the leadership, we do have the Enchantress, who of course is just a really good pick. Obviously, King Lewin can be okay in this matchup because he does heal himself, and he does also have the Lion's Shield. So for example, if he gets caught in a prey of an Othrema, gets sniped, unlike many other big, large lords like Karl Franz, for example, King Lewin can often survive those engagements and can do some pretty good work on the battlefield. But the Enchantress is certainly a very solid, safe pick as well. Very good healing, obviously pretty self-explanatory. Anytime you have heavy knights or characters being focused on by Way Watchers or Wood Elf Focus Fire, having the regrowth is going to be super solid. Earthblood, and it looks like an Awakening of the Wood. That's what she said there. Perhaps to slow down some targets. If you guys haven't seen the spell, it's a very cheap spell in the Lore of Life. Only costs 6 wounds of magic and does a little bit of magic damage, but namely you use it to slow targets down by 48%. So for example, if some Wild Riders or some Cav units from the Wood Elves are coming in there, she can awaken some wood under them and prosper. Gotrek, of course, always a fun character, and if the Wood Elves do come in with a surprise Durthu or a character like that, that is kind of one of the schools of thought the Wood Elves do have in this matchup. Sometimes they make a box, they have Durthu, and he's pretty tough to bring down because he's big, he's armored, and yeah, the Bretonnian Knights can get in there, but it's not always the most effective way to bring him down. So having a character like Gotrek in your army who is dedicated, anti-large, armor piercing is very, very juicy indeed. Front line's going to be Spearmen. Secondary line is going to be Peasant Mobs, or actually the reverse there. So Peasant Mobs in the front, Spearmen in the second. And it looks like the Taco is going to be coming in with some Grail Knights and Questing Knights and Knights of the Lion-Hearted as well. So the Merry Companions are here. Defenders of Flared Elite, Knights Errant, and yeah, so that's definitely a pretty elite Knight Corps. Grail Knights are very, very expensive, but they do have bonus first large, and they're good for the same reasons that Knights of the Realm are good in this matchup. Knights of the Realm are armored and shielded, therefore they can trade effectively against Wild Riders due to the lack of armor piercing on the Wild Riders, and the anti-large really helps them win that engagement. And Grail Knights basically do the same thing, but just on steroids. They, of course, just have better stats across the board. They have physical resist, perfect vigor, immunopsychology as well. Very, very cool units, and yeah, some Questing Knights for some extra AP in there, and it looks like that is going to be it. I think there's some archers in the back as well. And yeah, it's going to be Pox Arrows. And this is actually one of the biggest shadow buffs to Bretonnia. So you guys probably remember a couple weeks back, or I guess it's been like a month or two now. But basically they made it so you can't friendly fire yourself with poison arrows. And that was actually one of the biggest detractors from Bretonnia, because basically you'd ride in with your knights, attack a giant Shaggoth, right? And your peasant poison archers would shoot at the monster. They would hit your knights and basically nullify your knights and the enemy. But now it only nullifies the target they're shooting, which I think is very good. And more Grail Knights, that's it. So for the Forces of Dactor here, he's got the classic triple Way Watcher, very, very solid Wood Elf stuff. I really can't wait for the Wood Elves to eventually get some DLC or some content. It'll be really cool to see what other strategies can really bloom in multiplayer, because all you really see now these days is triple Way Watcher or like Durthu tree boxes. I mean, there are other builds, but they're just suboptimal compared to this, right? So it's going to be Wild Riders with some with shields, a Glade Lord with the Prey of an Othrema. Frontline is going to be Eternal Guard for those bad boys in total, Spellsinger of Life, and here it's going to be 2 groups of War Dancers with Azrai Spears. Pretty self-explanatory. Anti-large, armor piercing, pretty decent against some of them big old knights, and that is it. So the initial engagements are underway here, and Dactor going in for some gooning here. Certainly not a bad idea to try and take out the Peasant Bowmen with the Pox Arrows. Yeah, they take a hammering pretty quick here. I mean, I guess it, it's better than the ammunition being used on the Bretonnian Knights, like the Grail Knights, but it looks like the Grail Knights even did take some damage themselves. So this is going to be a pretty classic tactic you see from Wood Elves, right? They push forward with the Way Watchers, which then forces your opponent's elite protective units back like Grail Knights, and then that exposes the front line of Bretonnia to a hammering. So now the Wild Riders will be coming in on all fronts and getting some free kills here, but it's mostly Peasant Mobs, and they were born to do such things, the glory of the Bretonnian Peasant. They're going to be rode down by the Wood Elves, a lot of damage for sure. I would imagine that took them down to a solid 80%. You can see the noble Sons of Bretonnia here getting punted in. Wow, look at the damage on those Spearmen at Arms. What was that? That must have been some of the Way Watchers focusing them down, because that was just an absurd amount of damage. And yeah, they're not shielded, so I have a feeling it was those Way Watchers there. So this is pretty much the classic initial engagement here in this matchup. The Wood Elves kite back. They try and pick apart as much as they can before actually taking the fight, because the Grail Knights, like I said, and Knights of the Realm will outtrade their Wild Riders in straight up combat. So you wear down the rest of the army, you get rid of as many elite targets as you can, and chaff, and go from there. But the Knights of Bretonnia are going to be responding in kind. Not quite as much damage, but they do take out a couple Eternal Guard here, but are forced back. Of course, the Way Watchers getting some really solid volleys in those bad boys, and now it looks like some of the Grail Knights going to be hammering into the Eternal Guard, but a brutal Prey of an Othrema coming down. Really good stuff there from Dactor. And those Grail Knights are going to be taking a hammering for sure. Definitely very painful for Bretonnia. That's one of the Knights they really, really want to kind of keep in check here, or keep alive. But Bretonnia is going to be surging forward, countercharging here against the Azrai Spears and the Eternal Guard, who are braced. The Enchantress has engaged in combat here, and she does have her Mortis Engine effect, so there's going to be a constant drain, plus an Awakening of the Wood, actually really good. You can see that entire Wood Elf pocket starts to take some damage, as the Bretonnian archers are able to reform ranks and start ripping some shots in, which is definitely a dream scenario here for Bretonnia. So here the Knights were able to charge in and do some okay damage, but now they're going to pull back and go up and around, and maybe get a square engagement versus the Wild Riders. A little bit hard to say, but so far the Wood Elves seem to be protecting their backline pretty well. All three Way Watchers are relatively safe. However, the Wild Riders are being forced to be commit to the front line because the Eternal Guard have buckled, which pretty much opens a doorway to the back line. Now, this is going to be where the Wood Elves might start to have some serious trouble. That May Enchantress. The Fey Enchantress, it's not May. The Fey Enchantress here is going to be draining down the Wild Riders with her Mortis Engine effect, also lowering their melee attack by 5, which is very, very substantial, actually. So it puts them down to, well, right now they're away, so they're fine. And the entire time, the Peasant Archers are poisoning these bad boys. So the combat prowess of the Wild Riders is going to be heavily nerfed, while the Bretonnian Knights, of course, who already have an advantage, are really shining here. So now in the back line, you can see the Knights Errant getting in there. Some of the Bretonnian Knights do try and get around the flank, but Dactyr does an excellent job pulling back the Wild Riders and screening out the defenders of Flare de Lis, and minimal damage on the Way Watchers, honestly, and ammunition conservation has also been very good. These bad boys have 35 models and about 60% ammo, and that's kind of a recurring theme if you look at these various units. Very, very good ammunition. Now here we have Gotrek hunting down a Spellsinger of Life. Looks like he was able to get some good damage here on the Spellsinger, which is certainly a big grab. Taking a couple arrows to the face, I'm sure he's fine with that. Dwarves, their hatred for the Elves, I'm sure, makes them impervious to Elvish bowfire. You can see Gotrek charging forward quite aggressively, going to butter that bread of that Spellsinger of Life. Might be able to get in there. Man, buttering bread, it brings him back to the days of old. I used to go, growing up in California, well, in the town I grew up in, there was like a Caro's Diner right down the street from my house in the 90s, and man, I used to go there like by myself at least like 3 or 4 nights a week as like a young teenager and just get order cornbread, and oh god, it was so good. Cornbread with some butter, it's like one of the most delicious things ever. Anyways, Gotrek here is taking a ton of damage. Hopefully you don't mind my random diatribes, but yeah, quite a bit of damage coming in. Gotrek is a champ though. He certainly takes it well, and it isn't going to buckle him that much. Some of the Peasant Archers of Bretonnia have scooted up, probably trying to get in range with the Way Watchers, but being forced into a bit of an awkward melee. But the Bretonnian Knights are very much cleaning up the engagement here. You can see they've kind of wrapped around the back. They've outmaneuvered some of these Azrai Spears. Now the Bretonnian Knights are able to get into the Eternal Guard here, and that's going to be tough, because once the Bretonnian infantry starts to slow push, the Knights are going to be able to follow up in suit. Granted, have they taken enough damage from the Way Watchers for the Wild Riders to be able to clean up everything else? And, a bit of a scary situation here. You can see Dactyr coming in with the Wild Riders. All 3 of these Peasant Bowmen are somewhat unprotected. There's no Knights nearby, and this is going to be pretty disastrous for sure, as Rudolph is all up in the toe here, and he's going to be getting some big old damage here against these archers. And, yeah, you can see it really reflected. Starting to break there. Some of the Bretonnian Grail Knights, as well as the Knights of the Lionhearted and the Questing Knights, all very beat up, but of course with the blessing of the Fey Enchantress, are able to rally there and push them back, and looks like he was able to somewhat salvage that situation. Peasant Bowmen here should be okay. There's still 55 of them. I think some of them took a little bit more damage than others, but for the most part, they're going to be combat functional as this game does progress here. And the Bretonnian Knights, push in a little bit, but they don't want to overextend. You can see Taco doesn't want to be lured into this kill box here, where the Way Watchers can really bring them down. Ammunition here for the Wood Elves is running a little bit low if you look across the board here. You can see these bad boys are at about 30%. These ones at about 30 as well. And yeah, across the board, all below 30%, give or take. And also there's a bunch of spearmen kind of marching towards them. Now, Wild Riders, if they're able to catch the spears unbraced, can do some good damage, but they still may take some casualties, from the anti-large here. An attempted brace, but I don't think it got off. But some of the spearmen, even if a couple Wild Riders are dragged down here, that is really going to be enough to open up many doorways that the Bretonnians would like to enter. That is for sure. So here, Taco's going to be fanning out, taking a couple of Grail Knights and Knights here to hammer these Eternal Guard. The other Grail Knights going to be couching their lances in a very heavy-duty charge here against these Wild Riders, and they should win that. Granted, maybe not. With the Glade Lord nearby, it could be a bit of a tricky engagement, but no, it looks like they are able to win that quite handedly. Now, the Wood Elves are certainly probably, Balance of Power is just so damn close to this point here, and you can see Gotrek on the front line still going strong. What a champ. 503 HP as he is able to help cleave those War Dancers with the Azrai Spears. And now the Fey Enchantress is moving forward. It looks like the Wood Elves are a little bit ahead on the Bounce of Power, just ever so slightly, but the Bretonnians seem to be kind of creeping back. And a lot of the Bounce of Power here is going to be the Way Watchers. And I think trying to focus down the Fey Enchantress is a good call, because the Fey Enchantress, if it does go to a grindy, long-term game, is going to be applying a Mortis Engine effect that could win against, any number of infantry and things like that, right? So the Focus Fire coming in. Fey Enchantress taking a bit of a pounding here. She's about to be out of the Pravenoth Rema trap. Gotrek running in there quite angrily, but it looks like the Fey Enchantress, 413, another volley right here. And how much damage does she take? She is a foot character, so she's a little bit harder to hit, and she lives. -20. She's going to run, but she may have a regrowth in her back pocket or some sort of healing that potentially could salvage the game for her. So Spearmen getting in here, some of the Knights getting in here. Looks like all the Wood Elf Cav have pretty much been broken off. 7 here. We do have 4 over there. Looking a little bit grim for those guys. And Gotrek Gurnison is here, and he is certainly pissed off. Now he's going to be going in, applying some anti-large pressure here against the Glade Lord on a horseback, which of course is a large character. And for once in my life, Gotrek's heal actually goes off, and look at the amount of healing. Normally I see it go off and it just like bugs out, but man, that was like 1,000 HP. Gotrek pops his Doom. Yes, might as well be Gotrek versus Wood Elves here, as he does get into the back lines, and he is certainly going to be settling some grudges with these Forest Folk and sending them back to the hills. And it looks like the Weight Watchers are pushed back and more or less out of ammunition. I mean, 3 volleys here, maybe 0 here, so it looks like they're about to run dry. There still are some Eternal Guard, but I mean, there's hordes of Bretonnian infantry in the backfield, like peasant mobs, and if the Fey Enchantress is able to rally with any HP and get into a blob, although you have to also take into account here that the Glade Lord is here with 5 shots left. If the Glade Lord were to save its ammunition and go and hunt the Fey Enchantress down, I think that would be the appropriate play. Granted, a little bit more concern perhaps with some of the pressing issues that are here in the front line, but Gotrek is going to be a beast. He's going to be really tough to take down because Bretonnia, the peasant mobs and the Spearmen at Arms fighting shoulder to shoulder. It's not necessarily quality, but quantity certainly does the trick sometimes. And here you can see the remnants of the Knights of the Lionhearted. Very epic Knights indeed. Only 3 models charging in there and able to break the Eternal Guard with their rear charge there, which is certainly very strong. And now the Wood Elves, for the first time in a long time, are behind on the bounce of power. Here we do have the Glade Lord. It looks like Fey Enchantress is still running for the hills, but I have a feeling, considering how long she's been running, that probably has enough Winds of Magic for at least an Earthblood, which would get her up to a relatively decent state. At that point, she could maybe hide amongst the peasant mobs and, come back that way. Now, for what the Wood Elves have left, let's kind of peek around the battlefield. Looks like they were fighting a little bit close here, not close to the edge, but close enough for things to run off. So I think most of the Wild Riders did run, but Way Watchers here, who probably won't last terribly long with the advance of the Spearmen. And yeah, it's pretty much just the Glade Lord. This is actually becoming a very scrappy game. I'm really surprised the Fey Enchantress hasn't come back, but looks like she's not terribly interested. She's going to go back to her prophetic nature and just run back to the Bretonnian lands. Though it looks like this battle is probably fought somewhere in the High Elf lands. You can see some High Elf architecture here and things like that. Anyways, the brave presence of Bretonnia. Presence and peasants are going to be charging in with their pitchforks and hoes, and this volume of dice, man, just like in 40k, you throw enough dice, even a cultist can do a wound to a mighty Imperial Knight. And here you can see pretty much the same principle is applied as these Way Watchers are slowly taking, a little bit of damage here and there. Spearmen at Arms, 55 of those bad boys probably should be able to defeat the Way Watchers. Granted, leadership is always an issue for Bretonnians, so that's something that the Way Watchers may be able to capitalize on and maybe win that engagement. It's going to be a tough one to say. So here we have the Peasant Archer shooting in. It looks like Gotrek is still running around. Oh man, Gotrek is going to be a pain to deal with. And here you can see the Spellsinger of Life is now going to be the new target here for these Peasant Bowmen, which is a good choice. Almost broken. If it routes, Gotrek is going to be able to kind of chase it as he pleases and probably finish off that caster. And I just feel like there's too many Bretonnian bodies left on the battlefield, and many of the assets that the Wood Elves have, aren't really efficient at crowd clearing. Like, if they had 1 unit of Wild Riders left at this point in the game, man, the amount of value they could accrue on the battlefield would just be insane. But, the Bretonnian player here, Flying Taco, certainly did a good job as well of dealing with those units, and Gotrek is able to cleave the skull of that Spellsinger of Life here. And it looks like this is going to be the final battle for the Fate of Middle-earth. Glade Lord definitely wants to get out of here. Fey Enchantress ran all the way back off the edge of the map. I'm really surprised. But I guess maybe she had taken a little bit too much of a beating this game. But Gotrek is very single-minded here. He's pretty much just hunting down the Glade Lord, which is a good call. There's not too many other targets that really need his assistance. Over here, it looks like the Way Watchers might actually be able to defeat the Spearmen. Despite the Spearmen killing way more models, Way Watchers, of course, just have better leadership. And Gotrek's coming for it. Here he goes, baby. 2,000 HP. It looks like Gotrek's Doom is going to be popped just to mitigate some of the incoming missile attacks. And even if Gotrek can't catch this character, it is going to be probably auto-shooting at him or trying to shoot him down. So the Gotrek's Doom certainly wasn't a bad choice. Maybe a little bit early, but hard to say. So Gotrek is here. He's happy. He's cackling. We'll do a little bit of fast forwarding as the players do posture. You can see over there the hordes of peasants in various units are basically taking out the Way Watchers here. And Gotrek is hiding by the tree. Oh, man, I love it. Look at this. Not only is Gotrek a fierce berserker and a mighty warrior, but he's also a clever tactician, apparently, as he's just moving behind the tree. I love this. And, of course, this game is being played in conjunction with tournament rules. So once the Wood Elves run out of everything else on the map, like they're not attacking with Way Watchers, they are going to be forced to kind of engage here. So, yeah, this is going to be it. This is going to be the final battle here in just a second as Gotrek is on the hunt. A couple Spearmen are now in, and I don't know, is he going to get it? Gotrek is at 396. And now ammunition is out for the Glade Lord, which I think is pretty much going to spell its doom. Granted, this is so close. I mean, maybe if the Glade Lord can get Gotrek in 1 or 2 shots just solid. But if it takes too long, I mean, that's going to be a tough one. So here he comes. Pulling back here, I don't know if there's any other Wood Elf units fighting on the map. It looks like there's a couple being chased off here. I don't think that would count as attacking, so I don't know if this would technically be allowed in a tournament setting, but I'm not sure. Looks like the Wood Elves are going to be going after some of the archers here, trying to pick those bad boys off, chasing them down. And yeah, the last of the Wood Elves are shattered, so obviously now the archers are being attacked, and making sure they won't come back. But, you know, I don't think the Glade Lord, even without Gotrek, would be able to beat the Spearmen at Arms and the Peasant Mobs and things like that. I mean, the Peasant Mobs, like, yeah, not the best leadership, but they're getting some damage there. I mean, look at the HP pool of this character, and now she charges into some spears, which are able to turn around and do a little bit of poking damage as well. And Gotrek just cackling and waiting in the trees, saying, I know you'll have to come to me eventually, wench. He gets in there with a massive axe blow, takes no damage. 90 melee defense on Gotrek, but apparently the Glade Lord is able to get through that. 1200 HP here. Is Gotrek going to meet his doom here today? I love seeing Gotrek shoulder to shoulder with the mighty Bretonnian hordes here in the tree line. I think one more hit will finish off Gotrek, but if he gets like another good attack, yeah, he got another solid attack there. That's negative 29. And Gotrek coming in with the cleaving blow. Looks like he hits a few of his fellow lads, but that is going to be enough to break the Wood Elf Lord. And that is going to be all she wrote. So well played to Taco and Dactyr. Certainly a very fun game. Very technical, as are those Bretonnian versus Wood Elf games. You know, I used to think that this matchup was like so heavily favored for Bretonnia, but, you know, I see players like Dactyr here, like Xiphos play, you know, Wood Elves against Bretonnia. I'm starting to feel like in the hands of the right Wood Elf players, it can be a very even match. But I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but yeah, it was a really good game. Well played to Flying Taco and Dactyr. As far as the armies go, it's pretty great. You know, some people prefer Knights of the Realm. Some like to go a little bit more elite with Grail Knights. I've always liked the Knights of the Realm because I feel like if one gets caught in a bad Pravenoth Rhema, I feel like it's not as bad. But on that same note, you know, the Grail Knights really do have a lot of stopping power, better leadership, they'll last longer. So there's variables that go both directions. And yeah, Dactyr's build is like very standard. You get the triple Waywatcher, you screen with Wild Riders while pulling back. I think the one thing that may be a little bit unusual about it is the fact that we didn't see a Sisters of Thorn, or a Sister of Thorn, because of the free spells and the debuffs and the slowing mechanic she has with the poison tips and all that. I think that could be a good choice, but, you know, who's to say? Very well played to these two fine players. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this Bretonnia versus Wood Elf game. And until next time, you guys stay safe, and we will most certainly be back with more content soon. Take care.